Okay, so let's discuss Roswell. Not the trendy late 90s TV series, God no. I'm talking about the crash incident that occurred just after World War II. The crash and the wreckage recovery happened has never been in dispute from the United States government. What actually crashed and was recovered has been in dispute since day two. Everyone's heard stories, a lot of different stories about what actually went on that summer in the desert. Claims have ranged from that of crash flying saucer to experimental test aircraft to captured Nazi technology to weather balloons to super secret stealth weather balloons to time traveling stealth Nazi weather balloons. But let's not rush ahead. Let's try to examine this by the timeline, the facts as they were reported by the men involved in the incident. So it all started in early July of 1947. William Mack Brazel was a foreman living and working on the Foster homestead, a ranch which he was leasing located about 30 miles northwest of Roswell, New Mexico. While riding on the property, Mack found what appeared to be some sort of wreckage on the morning following a fierce thunderstorm. Although he couldn't identify the debris, he felt moved to report it. He had recently heard of a reward offered by the local media of $3,000 for information leading to the recovery of a UFO. He wasn't sure if that was what he had, but felt he should report it since in those days, $3,000 was pretty much like $1 billion today, or something like that. Brazel reported what he found to Sheriff George Wilcox. Wilcox went out to the middle of nowhere and had a look at the debris himself and decided this seemed more like Army stuff than sheriff stuff, so he informed the local Army Air Base. This guy, Air Corps Major Jesse Marcel, he spent a whole day trying to find the farm. When he did finally get there, Marcel investigated. He decided that what he had found was something amazing. He ordered soldiers brought out from the 509th Operations Group, and they grabbed up every piece of the wreckage they could find. After Marcel collected the debris, he did what any military professional would do. He took it home, woke the wife and kids, and showed them the potentially hazardous material. Following that, however, he took it to his superiors and showed them what he had found. Reports then suggest more soldiers went back out and did more crash retrieval shenanigans and brought everything back to the airfield. On July 8th, 1947, the Army Information Officer for the unit, Lieutenant Walter Haut, was ordered to give a press release declaring that personnel from the 509th Operations Group had recovered a flying disc or saucer which had crashed on a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. Wait, what? That's right, the base commander, Colonel William H. Blanchard, had ordered the media be informed that he had recovered and had in his possession a fucking spaceship. An hour after that press release, General Roger Ramey of the 8th Air Force was informing reporters that with his hawk-like vision he had already determined from afar that this was likely just another weather balloon. The very next day, after looking at the debris himself, General Ramey issued his own press release stating that what these rubes had thought was a flying disc or saucer was actually just some broken bits from a weather balloon. Case closed. At this point you can deduce that the obvious incompetent major who first cried UFO, as well as the colonel who ordered the masses be told about finding a shuttlecraft, were demoted or discharged, and that the Little Air Unit was likely henceforth known as the Flying Discs. Only you would be wrong. First off, the Little Air Unit in question was the 509th Operations Group. This was the same bomber wing that had just 2 years earlier become the only fighting unit to ever deploy strategic nuclear weapon in combat, destroying both Hiroshima and Nagasaki, a prestigious unit led by some of the U.S. Army's finest officers. Officers like Jesse Marcel. Major Jesse Marcel was the guy who took the bits home to the wife and kids. He was the Chief Intelligence Officer, or A2, at Roswell Army Airfield during this time. The Chief Intelligence Officer for the 509th Atomic Bombardment Operations Wing the first nuclear airstrike operations wing on Earth. Considering the delicacy and responsibility of this position, one would naturally assume that after mistaking a common weather balloon for a flying freaking saucer, that his ass, if he wasn't fired, he was at least transferred to a position of less responsibility where he wouldn't be the head intel guy for our primary nuke force. I mean, that would just make sense, right? Apparently not. After the incident, Major Marcel would remain A2 at the airfield for another year before being promoted to Lieutenant Colonel and moving to a higher position in Army intelligence, including Chief of Presumed Foreign Technologies Intelligence Division. This seems literally insane for a man who couldn't tell a UFO from a weather balloon. Okay, what about the unit commander, Colonel William H. Blanchard, who ordered Lieutenant Hout to give the press release stating the disc's capture? Well, although he was only given command of the unit in 1946, Blanchard was not new to the 509th. Blanchard was the officer who had been directed to prepare and supervise the detailed operations order for the delivery of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and acted as backup pilot for the Hiroshima atomic drop. Prior to that, in 1944, Blanchard was deputy commander of the 58th Bomb Wing. He flew the first B-29 into China to conduct strategic bombing operations against the Japanese mainland. He was later commander of the 40th Bomb Group and operations officer of the 21st Bomber Command. With all of this military knowledge and with so much time in the air, Blanchard concluded that what he had his hands on was a flying disc, and he ordered a press release that knowledge be made public. This was a career Army officer who we can presume would not jeopardize his standing without having some hard facts to back up such an outlandish claim. You do not rise or stay in command of such a prestigious unit without being a little bit political. So how bad was the fallout from this press bomb dropped by Colonel Blanchard? Surely such a grand error cost him dearly. An embarrassment like this could make people question the competency of the officers commanding such dangerous forces. Well, it didn't cost him much. A year later, in 1948, he was assigned to Strategic Air Command's 8th Air Force as Director of Operations. Blanchard helped direct the atomic training of crews for B-36s. That was the United States' first intercontinental bombers. After commanding B-50 and B-36 bomber units of Strategic Air Command, he went on to become Deputy Director of Operations for SAC in 1953. And on February 19, 1965, General Blanchard became Vice Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force with promotion to the 4-star rank. Later in life, many involved with the story would come forward to say they were pressured into going along with the Army's official story at that time. Major Marcel himself would make claims that the wreckage was switched prior to the famous pictures of him holding debris. And then while General Ramey had told the world his weather balloon story, he had been ordered to stand quietly by. In the early 1980s, during an interview for the TV series In Search Of, Marcel would completely reveal his side of the story, claiming Ramey had in fact ordered him to participate in the cover-up. In the early 1990s, the U.S. Air Force would admit they had in fact lied, but swore on their Aunt Clara's grave that this time they would tell the truth. They claimed that a super-secret nuclear test spy balloon was in fact what had crashed in 1947. It was called Project Mogul, and they said that while it kinda sorta was just a weather balloon, with its special sensors and fancy duct tape, its wreckage would be a ringer for a flying saucer. Since Project Mogul had only been declassified in the 1970s, no one stationed at the airbase at the time of the crash had clearance to know about it. The only problem with this theory is, it doesn't fit with the Army's indestructible weather balloon theory created 2 years earlier in 1945, when over 1,000 rounds of AA flak couldn't take down a weather balloon over LA, California, which foolish onlookers mistook for a glowing UFO. During an incident known as the Battle of Los Angeles. Oh, and it doesn't fit with what Major Marcel said he saw and held. It doesn't fit with what researchers have deduced this memo General Ramey is holding to read. It doesn't fit with the description flying disc or saucer released by Colonel Blanchard. It doesn't explain why Mac Brazel was held several days at the Army base. It doesn't explain why the Air Force waited until the 90s to explain the incident, even though Project Mogul was declassified in the 70s. Okay, maybe there's more than one problem. But there you have it. The facts, the claims, the stories from both sides. What crashed at Roswell? Will we the people ever be told the whole truth? Or will questioning the official party line continue to draw ridicule and persecution? Some say nothing stays hidden forever. Some say the winners write the history books. And Major Jesse Marcel, he says he found spaceship debris.